it has not been resolved. That things are still resolution, like even Chief Roy has spoken about that. There is no timeline because you do have people that need medical attention. Once again, back to my earlier comment, you have to determine that it was not more than one shooter, or if it was more than one shooter, was there an accomplice? Did someone drop the individual off? You know, there's also the connection. There was a reference about workplace violence, like a former employee, for example. A lot of what we see, too, is domestic violence. The unfortunate tragedy at Mercy Medical Center back in November,
right.
There was a case of a broken engagement, domestic violence, and we saw what happened there. So there's also trying to, like, connect the dots, you know, how we can resolve this as quickly as possible. Are there family members involved? So there's a lot of things to do. So we can't read into the fact that they've been there 1 hour. They could be there for an unknown amount of time.
And we've got Eugene Roy, the former chief of detectives, on the phone with us. Chief Roy, so when you look at, and again, these have not been confirmed, but the reports we're getting that 4 Aurora police officers and several civilians have been wounded. You know, what goes into your mind as a law enforcement expert as to motive for something like this? It doesn't appear this would be a domestic dispute. It would have targeted one person. This appears that this guy was. Well, I'll let you comment on when you hear those numbers. What goes through your mind as far as motive?
You know, we really can't rule anything in or anything out at this time. You know, what the motive was really at this point is irrelevant. The focus is on finding the shooter, containing the shooter, getting first aid to the people that have been wounded, preserving the crime scene. Those are the things that are important now. You have to focus on the priorities. The time for why will come after this is resolved and the scene is secured.
Well, it appears he's been firing indiscriminately. Do you, as somebody who's dealt with these situations, you can see there's tactical teams going into the building right now. We've also learned that FBI is sending its agents as well. So the presence is escalating since we've been on the phone with these 2 gentlemen. But for you know, somebody who's been in the situation, when you hear reports of a guy firing indiscriminately, talk about some of the challenges and the dangers. You touched on it earlier, but I would like to hear your thoughts a little bit more on, you know, how your officers have to deal with essentially from, you know, a madman, you know, pulling the trigger and firing in every which way.
You have to be able to think on your feet. You have to be able to run. You have to be able to do a lot of things at the same time. You can't. The objective is to get the offender into a place where he's surrounded. The chances of him being able to inflict any more injury are minimized or diminished. You don't want him running around being able to shoot at will. That's a bad situation. So that's what the focus is. You want to find the offender, you want to fix him in place, and then do what you have to do from there in order to resolve the situation.
Yeah, I also want to bring up, I'm seeing reports on Twitter that police are now saying the actual location of this is 641 Archer Avenue, which is actually a different company. It's a steel company called Aurora Steel. I mean, not far from the original place we've been talking about, the Henry Pratt building. But again, it's very close to the Holy Angels Catholic School, to the Holy Angels Catholic Church.
I'm just getting this in now. The city of Aurora is saying that the shooter has been apprehended. Sally was saying that that is a different building, though, than the Henry Pratt building, as we're looking at this building here. The city of Aurora, producers, if you can give us any more information, any details other though, there we go. Here it is, emergency update at 3 p.m. The shooter has been apprehended. The area, though, is still on lockdown. More information will be provided soon. So let's go back to Eugene Roy. If you're still on the phone with us, Chief Roy,
yes, Sam.
You're getting news that the shooter has been apprehended, but obviously you can't be too sure, right? There could be another shooter somewhere. How do officers approach the situation going forward from here?
Even though the person who's been identified as the shooter has been apprehended, you still have to treat that area as if there are accomplices or another shooter there. You have to sweep the area. And again, at the same time, you're doing multiple things at the same time. You're securing the area, you're searching for other possible accomplices, you're rendering first aid, making sure that the paramedics get in there to take care of the wounded. You have to sweep that building, and that's going to be quite an undertaking given the size of it. You want to sweep it, make sure that there's nobody else there, and then once that's done, assuming all the injured have been taken to local hospitals, now you want to preserve it as a
written earlier that we're told multiple people have been struck by gunfire. I'm looking at the Washington Post reporting that they heard from police in Aurora that multiple people, multiple officers were injured. We're waiting to confirm that. Again, we do know that the Daily Herald has said that 4 officers have been hurt, multiple civilians wounded and being airlifted to the hospital. Again, the word just coming minutes ago that the shooter has been apprehended, but the area around here remains on lockdown. I want to bring up again the fact that I think we're looking at a different building right now. This is all a manufacturing area, but we were dealing with the Henry Pratt building earlier at 401 South Highland. Then we moved over to the Aurora Steel building, where I think we might be zeroing in right now. Very fluid situation out there. Hard to get a grasp of exactly what we're looking at from the air in this view here, but obviously you can see so many officers still on the scene. Chief Roy, at this point, you talked about preserving that crime scene. How do you go about that? Because obviously during the past hour, this has been such an emergency situation of getting that shooter in custody. So now you kind of slow down the process a little bit, or are we still really focused at this point of seeing if there's anyone else involved?
Once the area has been secured, that the command is confident that there's no other offenders in the area, making sure that the injured have been provided with medical attention, have been removed. At that point, that's when we slow down the clock and start doing our critical thinking of we need to put a timeline together, we need to put the geography together, and we need to have the crime scene processors in there, the forensic people that are going to document all the evidence. Now, so that in the event that there's a criminal prosecution, we have what we need to move forward with that case.
Michael Verdon, are you still on the phone with us? I guess we don't have Michael Vernon. Well, I'll ask you, Chief Roy.
Oh, wait, we do have Michael.
Michael, are you there? Can you hear me? My question for you is, you mentioned a year ago, I think it was yesterday, was the Parkland school shooting. And since then, we've seen here in Chicago a number of changes to security at schools to prevent something like this terrible, that terrible tragedy happening again. Now we're seeing this here on a business level. Is this a sign that more businesses would want to maybe take up different security systems, that essentially we should take nothing for granted? It's sadly to say that we should take nothing for granted, and that maybe businesses somehow might need to safeguard for something like this? Or is this something that you can even protect yourself against? I guess we do not have Michael.
As we wait for Michael, let me just bring you this update. We just confirmed this, that several people have been shot. And up until 15 minutes ago, we're being told that this was still an active shooting situation with shots being fired up to 15 minutes ago. So we are talking about a long time where we had a shooting going on. If this started around 2 o'clock and it just stopped with the shooting about 15 minutes ago. We are also being told, this is confirmed, that the shooter has been neutralized. Now, what we do not know is if that means that they are in custody, or if they are dead at this point. We just know that the shooter has been neutralized. That is confirmed. And again, the very grim story here today, several people have been shot here today in Aurora.
And we have now at Fox 32, we are able to confirm that there have been 4 officers at this point shot. Now, have we been able to confirm their condition? Not yet. So we don't have any word on their condition, but we have confirmed through police on our own, Fox 32, 4 Aurora officers have been shot in trying to, as Ellie said, neutralize this active shooter. Several civilians have been wounded. There was an unconfirmed report that there was a fatality. That has still not yet been confirmed, but we have seen, or we have heard, I should say, several victims have been airlifted to a local hospital. So obviously the severity of these injuries, life-threatening. So the good news is, as Sally said, is that the shooter has been neutralized. The question being whether the shooter has been apprehended or killed, I should say. So Eugene Roy, are you still with us, sir? Okay, we lost Eugene Roy as well. So let's,
no, I'm here.
Oh, okay.
He's here. He's here.
I apologize. Okay, so you know, in terms of, you know, what, I mean, obviously, you know, when you're talking about a life or death situation right here, you know, officers, as you said, they have to think quickly, they have to move quickly. They don't really have time to. But, you know, at this point, are they trying to take? Would they be trying to take an active shooter in? You know, peacefully? Would they try to take him out? Oh, you know what? Actually, there was a question I was going to ask you earlier. Would you be bringing in negotiating experts at this point to try to talk to him, to try to get him to come out peacefully before resorting to firing, using a police officer discharging his firearm?
In a situation like this where you have an active shooter who's already injured a number of people through gunfire, it's no time for negotiation. Negotiation is not an appropriate tactic at that point. It's just going to endanger more people. If you have an active shooter, you have to respond to that threat.
And as far as responding to that threat, it's kudos to these officers for being able to neutralize this suspect and to get it under control. As you said, this is what they're trained for. In these situations, do you have any response on your own as far as how the officers have managed to handle this, obviously, a life or death situation?
I've been watching your feed, and I haven't seen people just running around without a sense of direction, without a sense of purpose. Everything looks like it's well managed, that there's a strong command and control element present, and that good plan has been implemented and followed.
I want to just tell you that our police sources are confirming again that several people have been shot, but that many of them were walking out of the building with their injuries. And again, up until about 20 minutes ago, the active shooting was still going on in there. We do know that the shooter was neutralized. We don't know if that means they were in custody or if they are dead at this point. We also are told that evacuations of the building we see right here are about to begin, and so they can go in and search that building. Now, as we talk about evacuating that building, talk me through that process if you can, Michael, because I imagine you want to make sure that no one else who could have been involved with this somehow gets to sneak out, right?
No, I don't think we have Michael. So, Chief Roy, can you answer that question?
You're absolutely right on the money there. You have to have controls. You have to make sure that you're not letting an accomplice out or an offender out with the employees. And at the same time, you have to be able to account for your employees, too. It's a very, again, it's complicated. It's something that's being done under conditions of high stress and uncertainty.
And you can see the police presence there as you're looking at this feed while you're talking to us, Chief Roy. I mean, like you said, what do you make of this? I mean, it's interesting for us because we're on the outside, but we can't see what's going on inside that building. That is a different building than we are told that the shooting took place in the Henry Pratt building. So what's your take as you look at these pictures right now? What are you thinking?
Couple things I noticed. First of all, you'll see there's an armored truck up by the one doorway, and just up until about a minute or so ago, there were a number of officers, and there were also a number of firefighters. You could tell them by the distinctive lime green patches on their bunker gear were staged there, and then they made their way into the building. You'll also notice on the bottom half of the video feed that a number of ambulances have staged on the street just outside the parking lot there. That tells me that the scene is safe. The incident commander has deemed that it's secure enough to where paramedics can go in and start taking care of anybody who might still be there and not able to move. Somebody hasn't been able to get out of there.
We're talking about Aurora Police here. They are the second largest police force in our state, led by their chief, Kristen Zeman. Again, Daily Herald reporting that 4 of their officers have been shot. We have not independently confirmed that, but we do know that several people have been shot here. Chief Roy, how does that work? As you know, you've got fellow officers who have been hurt out here, and you still got a major job to do. How do you focus on that?
You have to have a strong command team. You have to delegate. You can't expect one person or two people to do it by themselves. It's a team effort. In this case, I'm sure that the chief has designated somebody to be at the hospital, or she may be at the scene, or it may be the other way around where she's at the hospital with the wounded officers and she has one of her deputies standing in for her at the crime scene.
And now we are...
You can't do it by yourself.
Right. And now the City of Aurora is saying that the shooter has been... can we bring that tweet back up, producers, the City of Aurora? Because I'd like to read that again. I thought that the City of Aurora had tweeted out that the active shooter had been apprehended. Yes, it says the shooter has been apprehended. So, Chief Roy, does that mean that the shooter's still alive?
It would be conjecture on my part.
It would be conjecture,
because
okay.
Again, our police sources are telling us that the shooter is neutralized. They would not confirm whether that meant in custody or dead. We just do know that that threat has been stopped. But of course, now they're looking to make sure that that was the only threat. They have told us that they are about to evacuate this building that we see right here and go in there and search to see what else has been found. Talk to me, Chief Roy, about how the mood shifts of what you're doing out there on the scene. I imagine that you've got that adrenaline going, and as there's the active shooter at large, then now we have such a shift in focus.
When you respond to something like this, obviously your body has certain physiological reactions, the adrenaline surge, the adrenaline rush. Your mind and your vision and your hearing are running at ultra-high speed. Now the situation is de-escalating. You're going to de-escalate too, and you need to just catch your breath, and instead of reacting to things, you need to slow down your breathing and start thinking about things critically. Not that you weren't before, but again, there's certain basic physiological functions that are hardwired into the human body.
And now there's some emotions that you kind of have to just push off to the side for right now as you focus on this job?
You do have to put the emotion off to the side and function on getting your job done and conducting yourself in a professional manner the best you can.
And how does, listen, you know, you guys are human beings as well. I mean, you're affected by, you know, stress just like anybody else. So, you know, how difficult is it for a police officer to compartmentalize when they see things like this and to be able to keep a positive mental attitude and to continue to do their job?
Most police officers, and again, I'm speaking generalities here, are able to compartmentalize that. They respond to the emergency situation. The adrenaline kicks in. They do what needs to be done. And it's going to catch up with you later. You know, your body has received a massive jolt of adrenaline, and at some point, that's going to wear itself out of the body. It's going to dissipate. And you're going to go from having all the strength in the world to being unable to lift a pen. It does a lot of different things to a lot of different people. It's got physical effects, and it's also got emotional and mental effects down the road.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Officer Roy, for your insight in all of this. As we look at these pictures, you can see officers are filing out right now and congregating around that FedEx truck. Is there anything to read based on what we're seeing right now that there appears to be more of a sense of possibly some calm here at this situation?
I see the firefighters walking out. I would assume that means that their services in the medical role aren't needed. I see the officers standing off to the side. So it seems to me that they're in the resolution stage of this incident now, where they'll be awaiting instructions on how to proceed from here, how to get the crime scene processed, and attend to the other things. At some point, the authorities are going to have to consider getting those kids out of school and back reunited with their families.
Right.
There's a lot of things going on here that they're going to have to deal with.
Okay, a couple quick updates. We understand that Rush Copley Hospital in Yorkville has taken 2 non-life-threatening patients. Again, we've been hearing that definitely multiple people have been shot, but that some had walked out of the building, and now we know that Rush Copley, that hospital in Yorkville, has 2 non-life-threatening patients. I want to also let you know that Tammy Duckworth, our senator, has been tweeting about this, saying she's monitoring the situation. She calls it a scary, sad day for all Illinoisans and Americans. Thank you to the brave first responders who risked their lives this afternoon and apprehended the shooter. That tweet coming from Senator Tammy Duckworth right now.
And Mercy Medical Center is also letting it be known that they also are receiving patients from this shooting in Aurora. I'm looking at some tweets. We're looking at some video right now. This is a video from earlier on the scene. Again, we were told that officers and ambulances were called to the Henry Pratt manufacturing company, which is a short distance from the university campus.